In water, humans drown, just as fish suffocate on land. It's slow and painful and frightening. And we do it to more than 1 trillion fish every year. Put yourself in their place. Try to relate.
Fish and other sea animals are sensitive, intelligent creatures who have a demonstrated capacity to suffer pain. Massive trawling nets indiscriminately drag hundreds of tons of fish and other animals along the ocean floor. As they are dragged up from the ocean depths, the fish undergo excruciatingly painful decompression. The extreme changes in pressure can rupture their swim bladders and pop out their eyes. They are then tossed on board where the surviving fish either suffocate or are crushed to death. Others are still alive when they are hacked apart on these floating slaughterhouses. Untold millions of dolphins, turtles, and other non-target aquatic animals are also killed by ocean trawler nets each year. Today, approximately 1 in 5 fish consumed worldwide is raised in captivity. Like factory-farmed animals on land, farm-raised fish are crowded by the tens of thousands in small, disease- and excrement-ridden areas for their entire lives. When fish reach market weight, they are loaded onto tanker trucks and shipped to slaughter, where common killing methods include slow suffocation.
The challenge of our time is to reconnect ourselves back into that world and see the repercussions of what we're doing. And nothing illustrates the issue better than the meal that I just sat down today. You all sat here and chowed down on farmed salmon, and obviously you don't give a shit about what you're putting into your body. You know what a farmed salmon is? It's filled with toxic chemicals. You know, where does the food that you feed your salmon? I know Tasmanian salmon. Those are not Tasmanian salmon. Those are Atlantic salmon that are brought and raised in cages in Tasmania. When you render down these fish into pellets, you concentrate whatever's in them. Then you feed the pellets to the salmon and you concentrate what's in the pellets. So if you check those salmon, they're filled with dioxin, PCBs, gildrin, Teflon, malachite green. You can go down the list, and that's what you just put into your bodies. You know, and you know, when you feed salmon pellets, the flesh comes out gray. You wouldn't eat a salmon that was gray. A week before they're to go to the market, the seller comes to the buyer with a fan of colors from bright red to yellow and says, "What color do you want your salmon?"
They also had to figure out a way to make grayish fish flesh look pink, which it is naturally when pulled out of the ocean. So the aquaculture industry feeds farmed fish artificial coloring. This is from the drug company Roche. Fish farmers get to pick out the color they want to dye their flesh like paint chips.
You choose, and they feed it a dye the last week, so the nice orange color you ate is the dye they fed the fish. I'm not even going to talk about the ecological consequences of growing these carnivores in open net pens where sea lice and disease now are spreading to the wild fish in the neighborhood, and all of the buildup of feces under these net pens. The act of consuming that salmon has repercussions that go far beyond this room, that go around the world. But we live in a world in which these connections are shattered and we don't see them any longer.
There's a parasitic worm in fish called Anisakis. This year we learned that about 2/3 of retail fish samples came up positive for them. This is what they look like. They're really quite small, actually. You can see 2 here kind of peeking out of some sushi. Because people eat fish raw, parasites are always a concern, but the unique thing about these worms is that our bodies can be so sensitive to them that the worms can trigger an allergic reaction dead or alive, even if they're cooked. So we're finding some people that are allergic to fish really aren't. They're allergic to the dead worms in the fish. In fact, because we feed so much fish meal to chickens, you can have an allergic reaction to a parasitic fish worm and not even eat fish at all.
One of the things often found in this imported fish is a fungicide called malachite green. It's illegal to use in food because it causes cancer and birth defects.
Lab tests routinely detect antibiotics banned for use in food in the United States. Antibiotics are used to treat fish raised in crowded conditions that can breed bacteria viruses, and parasites. Food safety advocates say the FDA is not doing enough to protect consumers.
Consumers may be getting a dose of antibiotics with their seafood dinner, and that's something that the government should stop.
Researchers used ultrasound to measure the brain size in newborns of mothers who had high body levels of mercury compared to a control group of women who had low levels of mercury. Let's put that into practical terms. Compared to the low-level control group, here's where the high-level mercury women were. Now, how much canned tuna consumption is that equivalent to? Here's what your body mercury burden is if you eat 1 serving of canned tuna a day, about half a can. Here's what 2 cans a week will do to you. And this is just 1 can a week. So the bodies of the women suffering high mercury contamination in the ultrasound brain study were considered heavily contaminated, but even just a little canned tuna once in a while could bump your levels even higher. So the high really wasn't that high, but still, what did they find? They conclude that prenatal exposure to what may be considered really low levels of methylmercury does indeed influence fetal brain development as detected by decreased size of a newborn's brain.